We're so excited to have you. My first question that I really want everybody to know is if y'all can just give a little bit of y'all's background and how you got into angel investing, what was interesting about it for you. And yeah, we'll start with that.
So my background. Okay, thanks, Michael. My career was in healthcare generally. I was a faculty member most of my career in a number of different places. In '97, I came to Arlington as a professor in the College of Nursing and Health Innovation, where I was also serving as Associate Dean for Research. My primary responsibilities there had to do with bringing the capability of the college up to support a PhD program, which we did during the time I was there. I think it took us about 4 years to do that. I had an active research program, mostly in the area of cardiovascular kinds of things. In 2010, I moved into the Vice President for Research office and was there for 5 years. During that time, most of the energy that I expended anyway was increasing research budgets across the campus, external funding, that sort of thing. But we also had a major push to move forward with what I'm going to call generally as tech transfer. And I see Terry Schultz is on with us today. And I hired her, and she's done a fantastic job for UT Arlington and for the community. As part of that process, during those 5 years, we spent a fair amount of time streamlining the process that faculty go through in declaring their intellectual property, and then our tech transfer office booted up to attempt to distribute information about the kinds of opportunities that were coming out of the campus. I had my first contact with Tech Fort Worth when Darlene Boudreau was the executive director. She brought a client to me, and he and I worked for almost 2 years to establish, set up, build a rather large residential living community. The concept being, and this was probably back about 2006, that all of the facility had health monitoring throughout. So the concept was that anyone who lived in this facility would have continuous health monitoring to detect early indicators of health problems. My only observation, it was an exciting opportunity. We had sponsors, we had a fair amount of funding, at least promised, and in 2007, 2008, the big problem happened and all of our sponsors disappeared, and so that project went by the wayside. While I was Vice President for Research, at UT Arlington, anyone who was interested in proceeding with a startup, we referred to Tech Fort Worth. So during the time that I was Vice President for Research, we negotiated the contract with Tech Fort Worth to come to campus, and that's been a really successful partnership. And again, Terry is very important in facilitating that activity at UT Arlington. Since I had done as much work there, the other thing that happened while I was Vice President for Research, it was sort of something that at least Darlene tells me she had in her head before I became Vice President of Research, was I was asked to join the board of Tech Fort Worth, which I did, and I served there for 6 years. It was a great opportunity to facilitate the work that Tech Fort Worth does and really learn about all sorts of activities that are occurring in Tarrant County. And anyway, when I retired as Vice President, I decided I needed to do something, and so I joined Cowtown, and it keeps me busy. I'm now invested in about 13 companies. Michael?
Very busy.
Well, I do not have quite the illustrious background that Carolyn has. I was a nephrologist, which is a subspecialty of internal medicine. So as a member of the physician community, I have this disclaimer: physicians are bad investors. So, remember that, bad investors. And during my practice, I made a lot of bad investments with my colleagues who were, by and large, other physicians. My introduction to angel investing and accelerators and incubators started in about 2013 when I retired from active practice and service and became interested in some colleagues that I knew in Dallas associated with Health Wildcatters and Green Park and Golf, which was an investment community similar to the Cowtown Angels. But the huge difference here was both of those were for profit. And I didn't at that time know that there was Cowtown Angels or Tech Fort Worth in Fort Worth until I was introduced to it actually by my daughter, who really was an entrepreneur and got valuable information, help, technical support from Tech Fort Worth, as well as some investment by certain members of Cowtown Angels. So I come to this forum with a large history of unsuccessful investing. I have been on both sides of the spectrum, both helping entrepreneurs in their companies, specifically a company in Dallas that I was appointed by the angel group over there to protect their investment. And so I became a board member and got intimately involved on what it was like to be on that side, working with entrepreneurs and trying to get this concept of theirs, which was a service company, to work. That was extremely enlightening. And I think the main lesson there was there were two people, they had different subsets of knowledge and abilities. And the big thing they had to do was pivot, not from their initial idea, but significant pivoting in how they directed their service, which I think was amazing that they did that. And I've watched my daughter and her business, and actually my wife is an entrepreneur. She started a business almost 25 years ago. Her intention was not to grow it hugely. She wanted a profession and nurtured that profession as well as her skills, and actually became successful and made money with her little entrepreneurship. So I continue to invest. I'm a little bit smarter on the investment side. I appreciate the input and the learning that I've gotten from people like Carolyn and Stella and Charles Edmonds and other Cowtown Angels. I've learned a lot in the last 3 years, and it's a continuous learning process. And quite frankly, it's a lot of fun.
So, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd like to echo Michael's sentiment there. The group of Cowtown Angels is really a very eclectic group of individuals coming from all industry sectors. A bunch of really smart people who have various stages in their life, in their career, and some like Michael and me on the retirement side, but also some younger people who are serial entrepreneurs who have sold businesses and started new businesses and are now investing in other people's businesses. So it's really a very interesting group of people, and I too have learned a lot from my colleagues who are members of Cowtown Angels.
Awesome. I love your doorbell. It's a beautiful sound. Well, awesome. Well, I'm glad. And now everybody has a little bit of background about how y'all got into angel investing, and in particular with Cowtown Angels. I do have a little bit of background for everybody that's brand new to angel investing. I pulled a couple just short facts of what is angel investing, who are angel investors, and what do you need to be an angel investor. So in case there's anybody here that's looking at becoming an angel investor, I'm going to put that information in the chat. And then if we have more questions about that later on, we can go into those. But continuing on with y'all's insights on that, before we dive into, and just so that everybody knows, today we're going to focus on the application process of applying to Cowtown Angels and getting an investor's insights on what to do, what not to do, what stands out in a good way and in a bad way, and how to make yourself stand out. And then a couple tips from current investors. What are they seeing? What's happening in the landscape? What's happening in the market, during COVID-19 and beyond. And then they also have a little bit of advice for founders going forward. And so that's kind of the scope of today. So I'm going to put the additional information in the chat room. But before we jump in to those main points, do y'all have, and I know you kind of started mentioning that, but do you have any other like favorite highlights or favorite stories from your past couple of years of investing, something that was really fun or really rewarding that you think of when you think of your time investing?
Well, I really find every encounter that we have with a potential investment very stimulating. If you look at the portfolio of companies that Cowtown Angels have invested in, it's somewhat diverse, but largely technology. With my background in healthcare, I lean towards healthcare. That was not my first investment. My first investment was in a toy company that went bust. And I quickly learned that I needed to either learn a whole lot about other industry sectors or stick with what I know about. But the process of looking at potential companies for investment purposes, interacting with entrepreneurs, the enthusiasm and the excitement that they bring to the conversation when they come to talk to us, it's just very invigorating, and I look forward to it every month. I sit on the screening committee, so I participate in selecting those companies who are going to be coming to our forum. Let me just talk a little bit about the process that Tech Fort Worth goes through. We take applications every month. I think it's the last Wednesday of the month that they're due. And there is a format to follow, and I'll give some advice a little bit later about what you should do in terms of doing that, completing the application. There are, a handful of us who review those applications and select 3 or 4 of the companies that will rise to a sufficient interest level that they're invited then to the next phase of our process, which is presentation at what we call a forum. And this is an opportunity for an entrepreneur to present information about their company to the entire group. Currently, we're doing that virtually, but it's an opportunity to present the investment opportunity to all of the Cowtown Angels. Cowtown Angels then decide whether or not there's sufficient interest in pursuing any of those that the screening committee has brought forth. If there are, then the companies that are selected go to the next phase, which we call due diligence, or actually deep dive, I'm sorry. So the company is invited back for a 1-hour Q&A. If there are investors who are continuing to be interested, then those investors form a due diligence team and work very closely with the entrepreneur and the entrepreneur's company to flesh out a pretty extensive analysis of the pros and cons associated with the opportunity for investing from an investor's perspective. Once that process is complete, which can take anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks to, I think the longest we've ever done is like 9 months. Then there's a memo sent out, distributed to all members, Cowtown members, and each individual is then makes the decision of whether or not they're going to invest. Once that decision is made, then the investor is in direct communication with the entrepreneur and the company. So in that way, I think Cowtown is a little bit different than some of the other angel groups in that we do not invest as a group necessarily. We invest as individuals. And let me stop there and ask Michael if he has anything he'd like to add to that.
Well, that was well done. Let me just add to, we've got the, on the chat room, supposedly who's a qualified investor. Most angel investors, to be successful, have to spend time, and to make money, it's said that you have to invest in at least 8 to 20 companies. You know, I'm sort of prejudiced towards the lower number, but probably I've invested in about 10 companies. As one comes to an angel group, one has to really thought what their business plan is, what they want to tell this group to make them want to invest with you. They have, the entrepreneur has to show integrity and honesty. So when they work on their pitch, which is the term for the 12 to 15 minute presentation that you would give to the group, you have to assume the diversity of the group. If it's a technical type of investment, you need to simplify it as best you can for the non-technical people there. And it's important that you're getting one shot. So you have to have a great pitch. And with that pitch, they say that the entrepreneur also needs a 90-second elevator speech to tell someone in the elevator what their company is and what it does and what they hope to do. But it's said that, do you invest in the entrepreneurs personally, or do you invest in the idea? And I'm starting to lean towards investing in the integrity, honesty, and education and background of the entrepreneur, because when I've been led astray, I've been enamored and fallen in love with an idea and forgotten that it can be the greatest idea, but if the entrepreneur cannot execute that idea, if the entrepreneur will not, after the deep dive and people are starting to make a commitment, learn from the experience and advice of the angel group, listen to what they're telling you, you will not be successful in bringing your company to an appropriate exit. And that's another point that I think we need to make. When you're an angel investor, you are investing in the small company, and the entrepreneur has to show different potential exit sites along the way. Not that he wants the angels to invest for 10 years or 15 years and promote his occupation and livelihood. So that's very important. Every angel group will ask an entrepreneur, at what point will you have an exit? You don't have to necessarily do the exit, but are there exit points along the way, depending on how everything is going, that the angels at some point think that they can get some return on their investment? So I'm going to stop there.
No, I think that's a perfect place to really go full circle on that. question.
So let me interject here.
Yeah, of course.
Michael talked about integrity of the company's leadership. It- when I have sort of two areas that I really focus in on. If the company's product is one that evolves out of science, then I want to make sure that I have a good handle on understanding what that science is that provides the backdrop for the invention or the innovation or whatever that is being produced. But I too, like Michael, think that more important issue here is once I've established, that whatever the science is and that there is substance to the science, even if it's early stage, I put a fair amount of weight on the integrity, the forthcomingness of the management team. It's not that they have to necessarily have lots and lots of experience, but that they're coachable, that they're open, that they're seeking help and take help when it's offered. And really what I'm looking for, and I think many investors are looking for, are individuals who have enthusiasm for what they're doing, know it's a long haul, they're going to be in this for a while. They are looking for help in all sorts of ways, not just financial. That they are responsive to the kinds of suggestions that are coming in to them for various kinds of things. And they understand when their role might need to shift, when someone else might be more suited to lead the company. And this is especially true of the CEO. Having the ability to understand at what stage a company is and when someone else needs to be coming in to provide leadership, to provide leadership for the company. So it's a whole array of things that you're looking for in the leadership of the company, and that they know when to reach out to expand their capabilities. So if it's a regulatory issue, they've got regulatory consultants or advisors lined up. If it's a IP issue, that they've got folks either on board or in consulting roles or advisors who can provide that sort of support. So it's not just integrity, it's a whole personality style, if you will, that you look for, that we look for in making the decision to invest or not.
Let me just add that the individual does not need to necessarily be an extrovert, but the entrepreneur needs to know that they will have to network. They will have to constantly be reaching out to people for advice, ideas, not to be distracted from their main plan and their goals, but you have to network. You cannot do this alone.
So since we started on the question of the application, are you ready to go there, Devin? Okay.
You guys really hit some of the high level points I wanted to hit later on. But yeah, just talking about the application process, kind of not in general, but almost going back to the beginning when you were talking about, the process of, okay, you submit your application, it goes into screening, if it's voted in, it goes to forum. If it's voted after forum, it goes to deep dive, then due diligence, and then, there's an end result. So I just wanted to break down those pieces and just get, 30 seconds to 1 minute for each piece. And just talk about, what are the most common shortcomings and the most common, what really stands out and what really, is a red flag at every stage. Not every stage. I'm thinking, let's talk about, the application and screening committee, and then at forum, and we can group forum and the deep dive together. And then maybe do a little bit of due diligence, but the red flags and the green flags from those 3 stages. High level is kind of what I'm looking for.
So I'll start with the application process. it's important to fill out the form. The form is available on Tech Fort Worth's website. It's important that you fill out the form completely. It is, for many of the individuals who sit on the screening committee, it is the only information that the screening committee member looks at. So if it's not on the application form, you haven't shared it. It's a red flag to say, go look at this website. It's a red flag to say, go look anywhere else. We process somewhere between 20 and 28 applications on a monthly basis, at least up until recently. We process eight months, I think, out of the year. And we have, they come in on the last Wednesday of the month, and we meet to select the individuals who go forward, or the companies to go forward, the following Tuesday. So there's not a lot of time for the members of the screening committee to look at other things. If a company is of interest, certainly a screening committee member can look at other pieces of information, material that you might have shared with Tech Fort Worth on Procedure. We also have Cowtown Fellows from SMU who facilitate some of the background material. They come prepared to give their analysis of what's positive and what's negative about the company. And so you're looking for a succinct statement of what the company does. What is it that they produce, manufacture, generate, whatever. Very, very succinct statement that is in layman's terms. To the extent possible, you want to avoid a lot of technical jargon, abbreviations. And if you look at the application, the best thing you can do is just answer fully each of the things that are listed in the application. You do that, and that will be very positive for you. Basically, what we're looking for is a company that looks like it's put together well, and the way we judge that is by how well the application is put together. Some of it has to do with interest. What we look also for is potential for growth. We're not interested in a company that's going to be slow growing, as Michael suggested earlier. Exit points, the opportunity, seeing potential exit points. We're in this to make money. We're not a charitable organization. And so, getting to the point of how it is that you're going to generate return on investment is important, and doing it in such a way that there is indication of, you're on top of a business plan, you have an effective leadership team, you know what you're doing, and it's, if you had other funding, especially if you've had non-dilutive funding, those are the kinds of things that are real positive.
Yeah, let me just add to that with a few red flags. When you come, how long have you been at this before you have submitted your application? If it's been 2 months and you're just started the company, you have no real sweat equity, that would be a bad sign. Most of the people have come that I've seen have usually been at this at least a year, and many longer than a year. Have they had family and friends that thought enough of this to invest? Have they invested themselves? When they come, do they have any debt? That's a real no-no. You do not want to come to an angel group having say, well, we have these loans already that we have to pay back. And the angel group would assume that the angel group's going to fund and pay back the debt. There's the parking lot test. What do you drive up? I don't know if I really believe that, but if you drive up in a Mercedes, maybe that's not necessarily, unless it's an old Mercedes that your dad gave you, maybe that's not a good smell test. Trying to think, there's a few others. Well, you should come if you're going to finally make the cut and do a presentation come appropriately dressed. I mean, there's going to be old people like me in the room. And if you come in a slovenly t-shirt and shorts, you're not going to make a good impression. The higher up you go with your company, probably the more you're going to be conscious of who you're presenting to, how you look at that presentation, and how you just present in general. So
So, so,
those are insignificant things, but they are significant.
so the timing of approaching an investment group is important as well. You got to have enough. It's got to be more than an idea that you're still working on. We look at companies sometimes when they have a prototype, and that's really sort of a optimal time. Angel investors are early investors, but there's got to be enough there. The company has got to have made sufficient progress for us to have some confidence that something's going to happen. So if, ask others, when should I go for funding? When's the optimal time? Tech Fort Worth has all sorts of programs that can help people make that decision.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, another question that eventually you're going to be asked early on is, do you have IP protection of your idea? Have you done some already? Do you need some? Do you know what you need? Have you obtained basic legal advice? Have you built a moat? Again, that's the term, a protection of your investment, that nobody can immediately steal it in the first year or two. Those are probably asked during the first session of a lot of people. So be prepared for those questions.
Yeah, and just going off of that, that was a question I had a little bit later on, but now that we're on that topic, let's talk about IP. What is both of y'all's perspective on IP? Like, how strong does it carry across? Are you really looking for it? Are you not looking for it? Is it dependent on industry? Can you give a little bit of background on that?
So I think it's dependent on industry. If your company's product is software, isn't one of those things that I think is very well protected by IP. So I don't really care that much about IP, simply because it's not as important in that situation as it is in a drug development or a manufacturing process, or a product that is coming through either, and I'm going to use what I know. So, if you have a manufacturing process for whatever, that I would really look to see that there's intellectual property associated with it. If it's a new drug or medical device, I would also look for strong intellectual property coverage. If it's a service delivery of some sort, again, what is the opportunity here for even, why bother? But it is one of the things that we look at in terms of how far, if it's in one of those areas that IP may not be as critical. What's really important is how far ahead of you are you ahead of the competition, and how quickly is somebody else going to be able to come in and get into the same space that you're in. So so it's a little bit different look, but always trying to establish how much of a moat, as Michael says, the company has.
Yeah, I think you summarized that very well, Carolyn. It does depend on the idea. It does depend on how far you are along with that idea. It does depend on how you are continuing to develop that idea to stay ahead if it is a service. And at some point, especially if you're successful, if it's a product or something like that, you will be challenged. If it is really taking something that's different and new and there is a big drug company or some other company that you are really a thorn in their side, they will come after you. So you have to have some IP protection.
Yeah, that's a perfect, yeah, all encompassing. Love that. So kind of looking at, I want to spend a little bit of time. We're at 5:10. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the investing landscape due to COVID-19. You know, what's going through your heads now? What do you think the future holds? So my first question with that is currently, because we have had, I think we've had 2 forums during COVID-19. So through seeing those and your thoughts during those and after that, are both of you considering new opportunities created by COVID-19, products that are created around to solve problems that have popped up during this pandemic? Do you think other investors are looking at those, or do you think they'll look at them in the future, or are you kind of taking a pass on those type of products and companies right now?
So I'm actively pursuing investments that are trying to take advantage of the current landscape. Oh, one of those companies that I recently invested in is a portfolio company and was a portfolio company before I invested. Mm-hmm. And the CEO of the company, I did not invest in them when the company first came to us. And it's a drug company, or a company that's trying to put a drug onto the market. The CEO sent me an email, this must have been back in March, and indicated one of the things that they were trying to do because they thought that their particular drug would be useful in the treatment of one of the complications of COVID. And so based upon my suggestion, we had the company back to Cowtown. And the company picked up, I think, some additional investors. Certainly I invested in them. So whether it's COVID related or other, I think this is how I'm dealing with this particular time is I'm really looking for companies to invest in. The opportunity is there. I think I'm optimistic about coming out on the other end, that the economy will be back full steam. And it's going to be some of the new ideas, the new kinds of things that are this particular climate permits us to be able to entertain that are going to be some of the big winners. And I don't know that that's going to be in terms of COVID treatment or not, but I'm talking generally about all sectors. I mean, it's an opportune, it's exciting time. And if you've got an idea, I'd say go for it.
Yeah, I'd just add to Carolyn, when I first saw that question, I thought it was referring to the ability of angel investors to continue investing. And COVID-19 has not, to my knowledge, really affected the people who are doing angel investing at this time. Most of them are high net worth individuals. Most of them are continuing to make money, I guess, in the stock market. There's a tremendous amount of liquidity that the Federal Reserve has unleashed on this economy. So there's a lot of money, and a lot of people have not been affected like so many others who maybe lost their jobs or can't go to work, or their small businesses or in services directly involved with people. Those are the people that have been hurt so far. That's not to say that something might not happen that we're not expecting, but right now there's tremendous amount of money for angels and other investors to give to entrepreneurs. As far as COVID itself, we're seeing the acute effects of COVID, but this disease, as you read the medical journals, is going to unleash a tremendous amount of chronic diseases in people who survive that we're really not aware of. But medical journal after medical journal is starting to discuss not just the acute treatment, but the side effects that COVID is doing to multiple parts of the body, the heart, the kidneys, the liver. We've all concentrated on the lungs, the central nervous system, the brain. We don't know the long-term effects of this disease on the individual or our society. And there's going to be, well, there's terrible things happening, there's always opportunity there. So we need to be cognizant of not only that we might survive the recovery from COVID, but COVID has unleashed a lot of potential problems that will need to be solved. And entrepreneurs may be the ones that are able to do that, whether it's a service or a drug or something else.
Awesome. I think that that's a really good place. I want to open up to some audience questions. And I know y'all have been sprinkling them throughout the chat box, but currently it's so full. If you could resend them, that would be incredible, just so they come to the top of the list for me, and we'll start asking those. But while you're submitting your questions one more time, I want to end with one answer from both Michael and Carolyn, and just ask, were there any large lessons that you learned from the last recession in 2008, 2009, dot-com bubble? Anything you learned from that you want to extend to everybody now, or any, just final thoughts for founders or investors right now looking to get into this space?
I really don't. I wasn't investing at the time. I shared with you the story of I was working with an entrepreneur, and life's uncertain, and it can happen if your funding disappears. And certainly, I was familiar with that in terms of research programs where funding disappeared or was no longer continuing in a particular area. So that was really my only experience in the past. I'll have to let Michael address this one.
Well, as I started to say at the beginning, I have a nice track record of failures. And the failure that I had was not in 2008, but was actually back in 1988, 89. I'd invested in a monoclonal antibody company. This was cutting technology. We had a large amount of money. We had people from the drug industry come on. We located the company in Atlanta next to the CDC. And then this economic crisis occurred, and there wasn't this great government intervention that we've seen since that time. So the only thing I'd want to say is watch what the government is doing, because it's not just the crisis itself, it's how does corporations and the government and the Fed react to the crises as they occur. The political and economic environment for the government can affect the ability of people to be able to invest and how they invest. And it's, I don't want to, digress, but my impression of 1929 was totally wrong until I read a book that was written in 1986 that looked at from 29 on, and the real effects of 29 were not felt until 1931. So we had a year and a half there of things reasonably pretty good, the government making the right moves. President Hoover made the right moves, and then all of a sudden they decided they wanted to balance the budget and do some of this other silly stuff that just put a huge stop on what was occurring, liquidity, and the recovery. So the government stopped that one. So far, the government's doing great on this one, and I hope it continues. And that may be a little digression and, maybe not appropriate, but I just want to get that in.
All right, let's see. So we had a couple different questions pop in. One of them that came up was regarding due diligence. So when due diligence is happening, what kind of documents are you looking for? And since both of you have been on due diligence teams, can you give kind of an inside look to, what can make the process, instead of taking 9 months, maybe take a couple months less than that? Like what pushes the ball down the court? How do you prepare for that? What does a entrepreneur need to provide so that the investors can make the best decision possible?
So one of the things we provide is a checklist of everything that we want, and it's everything that you've got: your incorporation papers, your bylaws, your board minutes if you have a board, detailed financial records, your retirement programs, your benefits package. I mean, in addition to the usual kinds of things that you would think of, like cap tables and documents of that sort. And the more ready you are to share those and have those in an organized form, the more quickly the process goes. So, I mean, we really look at everything. We do background checks. We do reference checks on the leadership team. We have the financial piece is sort of interesting because we have some folks who really get into that. And I've been lead on a due diligence team where the individual who was on the team with a financial background redid the books basically for the person to point out the errors they were making. So, I mean, it's very comprehensive and it's very detailed. And the more you can be prepared to put everything forward as quickly as possible, the quicker it'll go.
Right, I would echo that. It's got to be organized and presented as quickly as the entrepreneur can do it. And there was a book I was going to recommend, and Devin will have it on the end of the session, Angel Investing by David Rose. It's got checklists in the book. So these would be a general type checklist as to whether you would be investing with Cowtown Angels or any other angel groups. That's a pretty good book just to read to see what angel investing is all about.
And just to add a little bit onto that, Carolyn mentioned it, and I think Michael mentioned it as well, but yes, Cowtown Angels does have a due diligence checklist, so you can, arrange a deal room however, each group you invest with or are looking for investments for, you can create a deal room, which basically holds all the files that group is needing to go and check. But from what I've seen on the due diligence teams is that the more information you provide, the easier it is for them to, come to those decisions and ask you questions. And you're not waiting on time to see this file and this file and this file. So definitely just echoing what they're saying.
The process that took us 9 months, basically the company didn't have those documents and we're in the process of generating them. And we liked the potential of the company enough that we stuck with them while they were doing all of the work that they should have done before we started our due diligence process.
So we had a couple questions about IP again. Allison, I'm looking at them right now. Let's see. I'm wondering, I don't know if either of you have background in process patents for IP protection. Do either of you know no? Okay, cool. No. Allison, we can, go ahead, Michael. Did you say something?
No, I don't.
Okay. Allison, we'll get you connected with somebody who knows. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I want to point out is among the angel group, as I've already said, there's diversity of background, knowledge, capability, experience. But the other thing that we do, if we are in need of a particular kind of expert consultation, we seek that from non-angel members so that we can actually do a very thorough analysis of the opportunity, the investment opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have a very diverse network that they can call on if it's not already within the 50 members, which is already extremely diverse. Um, awesome. So I know we got to a couple questions. If I missed yours, continue to just put them down below so that I can re-see them. Um, but let's see, we have a couple minutes left. Let me go back up to some of my questions. One of the biggest things that I've seen from within the screening committee is, inviting somebody back once they've hit a certain milestone. And so for just to expand on that for everybody in the room, if, they're looking at 30 companies, they pick 4 to move on to forum. A couple of the companies we invite back to reapply for, the next cycle or maybe within a year. And we say, we'd love to have you back once you hit this milestone. It makes it a safer, thing for us to look at investing in. So looking at, kind of the concept of milestones, what do y'all normally look for in milestones, and what would you normally ask of a company?
Well, again, that depends upon the industry sector.
Yeah.
But if you as the company, the leadership of the company, know what you need to do to de-risk the investment, and those are the kinds of things that an investor is going to be looking for. If you're at the concept stage, you've got a long way to go to de-risk the investment. If you are involved, if you're to the point, if you have a manufacturing process, but you've not done it beyond the bench in the laboratory, how are you going to de-risk the upscale? How are you going to de-risk making sure that materials that you have that are essential to the production of whatever the product is are readily accessible? If they're rare earths, for instance, which are somewhat scarce, how are you going to assure that you have the supplies that you need? So de-risking is, and that's what constitutes the milestones. Milestones could be along those lines. Milestones could be along developing a marketing plan, for instance. We often have companies come to us that have products but have no marketing plans. And, it's the individuals who are involved in the company up to that point in time understand the importance of marketing but haven't addressed it. Those are a little bit later stage. From the screening committee, and by the way, we also do this after people have come to forum. If a company has sufficient interest but potential for interest, we might have them come back after they've met a milestone. But for companies that are coming through screening, if we see a company that looks like it's making progress and it's just a little too early, then we'll give them some feedback and we'll say, when you've come to this point, come back, reapply, and we'll go through the process again and see if we agree with you that you're now ready to go before the angel group. But, basically it's de-risking the investment.
Right. I would just add to that is if you had an initial business plan that we thought was reasonable, even though it might not have been totally complete, such as what Carolyn mentioned, the marketing part of it. If you come back to us, I would want to know, well, did you follow that business plan? And at what point are you in that business plan? And if you didn't follow that, why not? What happened? Can you explain why you're not following that? Does that make sense? So you have to have the plan. You have to be executing the plan. And if the plan is not working, can you pivot from that plan with good rationale?
So, okay, we're about 2 minutes left. And while there are a couple more questions, I'm going to answer those questions in the follow-up email that I send. And I want to give just a little bit more information. So if anybody has to hop off at, 5:30, you have this information leaving this event. So, well, first off, Thank you, Carolyn and Michael, so much. You gave us a great inside look into angel investing today. I think you gave some great information for potential investors in the room and entrepreneurs in the room. So thank you for that. If you are interested in learning more about Cowtown Angels, potentially applying, potentially becoming an investor with Cowtown Angels, or an entrepreneur looking for investment with Cowtown Angels, I will attach the Cowtown Angels website on the follow-up email that I do. We also had a very kind